The day was hot, and the road stretched endlessly under the bright sun. A young boy walked slowly along the side, his bare feet covered in dust. His clothes were old and worn, his stomach empty, but his eyes still carried a quiet strength. He had no home, no family to run back to, and no warm meal waiting for him. Each day was the same, searching for scraps, doing small chores if someone offered, and hoping he could survive another night. As he walked, his eyes caught something unusual. A car was stopped on the road, not far ahead. The shiny black vehicle looked expensive, very different from the old cars he usually saw. He slowed down, curious, and noticed a woman inside. She looked worried, her hand resting on her stomach, and her face pale as if she was in pain. The boy stopped for a moment, unsure of what to do. Many people walked past him every day, ignoring him as though he didn't exist. Maybe she would do the same, but then he saw her struggle to open the door, her movements shaky. Without thinking further, he hurried closer. "Do you need help?" he asked softly, his voice low but filled with concern. The woman looked up, her eyes tired but kind. She nodded weakly. "My car stopped, and I don't feel well," she whispered, holding her stomach as if to protect the life inside. The boy's heart beat faster. She was pregnant. Alone on this hot road, and clearly in pain. He looked around, hoping someone else would notice. A few people passed by, but they glanced quickly and kept walking. Some even crossed to the other side of the street, pretending not to see. The boy couldn't understand why they ignored her. Couldn't they see she needed help? He stepped closer, standing by the car door. "Don't worry, I'll try to help you," he said with a courage that seemed far bigger than his small, thin body. He had nothing, no money, no food, not even shoes, but at that moment, all he wanted was to ease her fear. The woman tried to smile at him. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. He quickly looked up and down the road, waving his arms to catch the attention of any passing vehicle. Some drivers glanced but drove on. A truck rolled by, and he ran into the middle of the road, shouting and waving his arms wildly. The driver slowed, annoyed at first, until he saw the pregnant woman leaning against the car. After some hesitation, the truck stopped. The boy ran back, helping the woman sit by the roadside under the shade of a small tree. Sweat rolled down her forehead, and she seemed weak. "Please wait," he told her, before dashing across the street to a small shop. He searched his pocket and found only a single coin, the last bit of money he had managed to keep. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a small bottle of water and a piece of bread. He ran back and gently handed her the water. She looked at him with wide eyes, shocked. "You spent your money for me?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. The boy shrugged shyly. "You need it more than I do." She drank slowly, the water cooling her dry throat, then nibbled at the bread. Tears filled her eyes. It wasn't the food or water that moved her, but the thought that this poor boy, who clearly had nothing, still chose to give up what little he had for her. The boy stayed by her side, refusing to leave. He kept watching the road, trying to signal anyone who could take her to the hospital. Every now and then, he asked, "Are you okay? Is the baby okay?" His voice carried real worry, not because he expected anything in return, but because he couldn't bear the thought of something happening to her, or the child she carried. As the minutes passed, the woman's breathing grew heavy. She tried to hide her fear, but the boy noticed. "Don't be afraid," he said gently. "Someone will help us soon. I'll stay here with you. You're not alone." The words, spoken by a homeless child, felt more comforting than anything she had heard in a long time. She reached out and lightly touched his hand, as if drawing strength from him. "You are very kind," she whispered. The boy didn't answer. He only kept his eyes on the road, determined to find help. Though his stomach growled with hunger and the sun burned his skin, none of it mattered now. All that mattered was making sure this woman and her baby would be safe. And so he waited, standing tall beside her, a small figure with a big heart, unaware that this single act of kindness was about to change his entire life. Asterisk, the woman leaned against the tree, breathing slowly, her hand still pressed over her stomach. The boy stayed close, watching her carefully, ready to run if she needed something. His eyes kept moving from her face to the road, searching for help. The truck that had stopped earlier had gone away after the driver claimed he was in a hurry. The boy's heart sank, but he didn't give up. He stood back up and waved at more cars. But again, most just rushed past. Some drivers slowed down for a moment, looked at the woman and the boy, then pressed the gas again. It was as if no one wanted to get involved. The boy felt frustration, but he refused to let her sit there helpless. He thought quickly. If no one would help, then he would have to do something himself. He looked at her again. She was sweating, her lips dry, and her face showed pain. He crouched down beside her. "Wait here. I'll bring something for you," he said firmly. She tried to protest, shaking her head weakly. "You don't have to," but the boy had already made up his mind. He ran back toward the little shop he had gone to earlier. His pockets were empty now, except for that single coin he had already spent. He stood outside the shop, thinking hard. What could he do? Then he noticed a few empty bottles lying near the garbage bin. He picked them up, dusted them off, and walked inside the shop. The shopkeeper frowned at him, ready to chase him away, but the boy quickly explained. "Please, sir, can I exchange these bottles for water? The lady outside, she's not well. She's pregnant." The shopkeeper looked doubtful, but after seeing the boy's desperate eyes, he finally nodded. "All right, just this once." The boy rushed out, clutching the bottle of water tightly. He also managed to get a small piece of bread. It wasn't much, but it was something. When he reached the woman again, she looked at him in surprise. You brought more?" The boy handed it to her with a smile. "You need strength. The baby needs you strong." Her hands shook as she took the bottle. "But why are you helping me? You have nothing yourself." The boy lowered his head, shyly scratching the dirt with his toe. "Because you need someone. I know what it feels like when no one helps you. I don't want you to feel that way." Those words pierced her heart. She had grown up in comfort, with money, cars, and people always ready to serve her. But in that moment, sitting by the roadside with sweat dripping and fear rising, the one who stood by her was not a wealthy man or a kind stranger in fine clothes. It was a poor boy with nothing to give, but his heart died as she drank the water slowly. The boy sat next to her. He looked small against the wide road, his clothes torn, his face thin from hunger. She realized he must be suffering more than she was, and yet he didn't complain once. He didn't ask for food. He didn't ask for money. He just stayed. Minutes turned into nearly an hour. The boy's stomach growled loudly, but he hid it by patting it softly, hoping she wouldn't notice. The woman did notice, though, and it broke her heart. She tore the bread in half and handed him a piece. "Eat with me," she said gently. He shook his head at first. "It's for you." But she insisted. "If you don't eat, I won't eat either." The boy hesitated, then finally took the piece, nibbling at it slowly. It wasn't much, but it felt like the best meal he had in days. He smiled faintly, and she smiled too, despite her pain. For a brief moment, the world around them disappeared, and it was just the two of them, two strangers from completely different worlds, sharing bread under the shade of a tree. After some time, the woman asked quietly, "Where is your family? Who takes care of you?" The boy looked down at the dirt, silent for a moment. Then he spoke in a low voice. "I don't have anyone. My parents are gone. I live on the streets. Sometimes I find work. Sometimes I don't." The woman's eyes filled with tears. She had seen poverty before, but hearing it from the lips of this boy who had just given her everything he had, it felt different. It was raw. It was real. She reached out and touched his hand softly. "You're not alone today," she whispered. "You have me, and I will not forget this." The boy didn't know what to say. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. He just nodded and kept watching the road, determined not to let her suffer alone. More cars passed by. Some slowed down, some didn't, but the boy stayed, his small figure standing guard. Even though he was poor, weak, and homeless, he carried himself with a quiet bravery. He didn't realize that his simple choice, to stop, to care, to stay, was the beginning of something much bigger than he could imagine. And as the sun slowly began to sink lower in the sky, the boy's heart stayed strong. He had nothing in his pockets, but he had already given her something priceless: hope. The sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting a golden glow over the road. The woman leaned back against the tree, her face pale, her hands pressed firmly over her stomach. The boy stayed close, his eyes darting between her and the endless stream of cars that continued to pass by without stopping. Every second felt heavier, every moment more urgent. Then suddenly, the woman groaned softly, clutching her side. Her body trembled, and fear filled her eyes. "Something doesn't feel right," she whispered. The boy's heart raced. He had never been in this kind of situation before. He was only a child after all, but in that moment, he didn't think about his age or his weakness. He thought only about her and the baby. He jumped to his feet and ran onto the road again, waving his arms frantically, shouting for help. A small car finally pulled over. The driver, an older man, rolled down the window and frowned. "What's going on here?" he asked impatiently. The boy pointed desperately at the woman. "She's pregnant. She's sick. Please, take her to the hospital." The man looked at the woman, then back at the boy. He hesitated, but something in the boy's desperate face made him sigh and unlock the door. "Fine, get her in." The boy quickly helped the woman stand. She was weak, her steps slow, but with his little hand supporting her, she managed to climb into the car. The boy climbed in too, sitting tightly beside her, making sure she didn't fall. The ride to the hospital felt like forever. The boy kept his eyes on her, whispering, "It's okay. Just hold on, we're almost there." The woman gripped his hand, her tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Finally, they reached the hospital. Nurses rushed forward as soon as they saw her condition. They lifted her carefully and placed her on a stretcher, wheeling her inside. The boy followed quickly, but a nurse stopped him at the door. "Only family can go in," she said firmly. The boy froze. Family? He had none. He wasn't related to her. He looked down at his dirty feet and torn clothes. He wanted to protest, to explain, but the words stuck in his throat. He just nodded quietly and stepped back. Hours passed. The boy sat on a cold bench outside, his small body curled up but his eyes wide open. He refused to sleep. He refused to leave. People came and went, families holding flowers, fathers pacing nervously, children crying softly. No one noticed the thin boy in the corner, waiting silently, his heart full of worry for a woman he didn't even know. A nurse walked by and paused. She had seen him sitting there for too long. "Why are you still here, child?" she asked. The boy looked up, his voice soft but steady. "Because she needed me, and I said I wouldn't leave her alone." The nurse blinked, surprised by his answer. She didn't ask anything else. She just nodded and walked away, but her heart felt heavy after hearing his words. Time dragged on. The boy's stomach growled louder, but he ignored it. The lights above buzzed quietly, the hallway smelled of medicine, and his small figure remained seated, waiting. Finally, after what felt like forever, a doctor came out. He looked around and then noticed the boy. "Are you with the lady who was brought in earlier?" The boy jumped up, his eyes wide. Yes, is she okay? Is the baby okay? The doctor smiled gently. They're safe. Both mother and child are. Fine now, you don't have to worry. Relief flooded the boy's face. His shoulders dropped, and he let out a breath he didn't even know he was holding. He whispered softly, "Thank you." The doctor studied him for a moment, then added, "She's asking for you." The boy blinked in surprise. "For me?" "Yes," the doctor nodded. "Come with me." The boy followed, his small feet echoing against the hospital floor. He was nervous, unsure why she would want to see him. He peeked into the room, saw her lying on the bed, pale but smiling faintly. When her eyes met his, they filled with tears. She motioned for him to come closer. The boy hesitated, then stepped inside slowly. He stood by the bed, shy and unsure. She reached out and took his hand. Her grip was weak but warm. "You stayed," she whispered. The boy nodded quickly. "I told you I wouldn't leave." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "You saved me. You saved my baby." The boy lowered his head, embarrassed. "I only did what I could." She looked at him deeply, as if searching his soul. In that moment, she wasn't just looking at a poor homeless boy. She was looking at a protector, a child who had given everything he had, even when he had nothing. And though he didn't know it yet, this meeting, in this small hospital room, would change the direction of his life forever. The boy stood quietly by the hospital bed, still holding the woman's hand. Her eyes were tired but full of gratitude. She kept whispering soft thanks, her voice trembling with emotion. For him, it felt strange. No one had ever looked at him that way before, not with respect, not with love, not even with care. He was used to being invisible. People on the streets rarely noticed him, and when they did, it was usually to push him away. But here, in this white hospital room, a woman who had everything he didn't was treating him as though he mattered. He felt a warmth inside his chest that he had never known before. The room was quiet until the door suddenly opened. A tall man in a dark suit stepped inside, his shoes clicking sharply against the floor. His face was filled with panic as he rushed straight to the woman. "Are you all right?" His voice was heavy with fear. The boy stepped back, unsure of what to do. He lowered his eyes, afraid the man might scold him for being there. The woman smiled weakly and reached for the man's hand. "I'm safe." "Thanks to him," she said, glancing at the boy. The man turned his head slowly, his sharp eyes landing on the thin boy standing awkwardly in the corner. His brow furrowed as he took in the boy's torn clothes, dirty face, and bare feet. At first he didn't understand, but then the woman began to explain. She told him everything, the car breaking down, her pain, the boy's desperate attempts to help, the way he spent his last coin to buy her water and bread, and how he refused to leave her side until she was safe. The man listened in silence, his jaw tightening, his chest rising and falling with every word. He kept glancing at the boy, as if trying to piece together how a child with nothing could give so much. When she finished, her eyes filled with tears. "If it wasn't for him, I don't know what would have happened," she whispered. For a long moment, the room was silent. The boy shifted nervously, wishing he could slip away. But then the man walked toward him slowly, his expression unreadable. The boy lowered his head, expecting anger or maybe harsh words. Instead, he felt a strong hand on his shoulder. "You saved my wife," the man said quietly, his voice deep but soft. "And my child." The boy swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. I couldn't leave her alone." The man studied him carefully, then asked, "Do you know who she is?" The boy shook his head. To him, she was just a woman in need. "Nothing more. She is my wife," the man said, his eyes glistening with emotion. "And I am not just any man. I am a businessman, a very wealthy one." The boy blinked, stunned. His small body stiffened as he looked between them. He had never stood this close to someone rich, never been inside their world. To him, billionaires were distant figures from stories, people he could never reach. And now he realized the woman he had helped, the woman he had shared his last piece of bread with, was the wife of one of them. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. He didn't know what to say. He just stared at the floor, his cheeks burning with shame. Would they think he helped her only to gain something? Would they send him away now? But then the woman spoke gently, her voice breaking the heavy silence. He didn't know who I was. He didn't ask for anything. He gave everything he had just to keep me safe. Her words softened the man's expression. He looked back at his wife, then at the boy. Slowly, he knelt down so his eyes were level with the child's. "You are braver than most grown men I know," he said firmly. "And you have a heart richer than any treasure." The boy's eyes widened, his chest tightening with emotions. He couldn't name. No one had ever said such words to him before. The man placed his hand gently on the boy's shoulder again. "From today, you are not just some boy on the street. You are the boy who saved my family. And I will never forget." "That," the woman nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Neither will I," she whispered. The boy stood there, silent, overwhelmed. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but deep inside, something shifted. For the first time in his life, he felt seen, not as a poor child with nothing, but as someone who mattered. And though he had no way of knowing it, this moment was the beginning of a future he never dreamed possible. The boy stood frozen in the quiet hospital room, his mind still struggling to understand what had just happened. A billionaire's wife, and he, a homeless boy, had been the one to save her. It felt unreal, almost like a dream he might wake up from. He expected the man and woman to thank him politely and then send him away. After all, people like them lived in a world far above his own. But instead of sending him away, the man pulled up a chair and sat across from him. His sharp eyes softened as he studied the boy. "Do you have anywhere to go tonight?" he asked gently. The boy lowered his head. He didn't want to lie, but saying the truth out loud always stung. "No," he whispered. "I sleep wherever I can." The woman, still lying on the hospital bed, turned her face toward him. Her eyes filled with sadness as she reached for his hand. "Not anymore," she said softly. "You will not sleep on the streets again." The boy looked at her in shock, his lips parting but no sound coming out. No one had ever said such words to him before. The man nodded firmly. "You saved my family. Now let us take care of you. From today, you will have food, clothes, and a place to call home." The boy's eyes filled with tears, though he tried to blink them away. He didn't know how to accept such kindness. "But I didn't do it for this," he murmured. "I only wanted to help." "And that," the man said, "is why you deserve it even more." Days later, when the woman was well enough to leave the hospital, she insisted the boy ride with them. He sat quietly in the back of their large car, his wide eyes staring at the shining streets and tall buildings. It felt like another world, one he had only seen from a distance while searching for scraps of food. When the car finally stopped in front of a grand house with tall gates and gardens stretching far, the boy gasped. He had never seen anything like it. To him, it looked like a palace. Inside, servants hurried forward, surprised to see the thin boy walking alongside their employers. But the woman smiled warmly at him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "This is the boy who saved us," she explained. "From now on, he will stay with us." The boy felt shy, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. But slowly, as days turned into weeks, he began to feel the change. He had his own bed, soft and warm, unlike the cold ground he was used to. He had food every day, enough to fill his stomach, until he no longer went to sleep hungry. He had clothes that actually fit him. And most of all, He had people who cared whether he woke up each morning. One evening, as they sat together at the long dining table, the woman reached across and took his hand. Her eyes were soft and full of love. "You gave me hope when I was afraid," she said quietly. "I promise, my child will grow up hearing the story of the poor boy who gave everything he had to save us." The boy's throat tightened, and he looked down, his heart swelling with feelings he could not describe. For the first time, he truly believed he was not invisible. The man added, "You will go to school. You will study. You will have a future. That is my gift to you for the gift you gave us." Tears finally slipped down the boy's cheeks. He had never dared to dream of school, never dared to imagine a life beyond the streets. Now, because of one act of kindness, the impossible was becoming real. And so his life began again. From that day forward, he was no longer just the poor boy walking barefoot along the road. He was the boy who had saved a woman and her unborn child, the boy whose heart was bigger than his hunger, the boy who proved that kindness could change everything. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but one thing was certain: he would never walk that lonely road alone again. And as the story closed, one message remained clear: sometimes the richest treasures are found in the poorest hearts, and one small act of kindness can open the door to a brand new life.